Good morning, Misfits. You are tuning into another episode of the Misfit podcast. On today's episode, we answer your questions. As always, we start with the questions that the people ask on Telegram because those are the people most involved within the community. Then we go to social media, and if we have time, we have questions that are sort of asked throughout the weeks and months that don't always get a, kind of long form answer from Paige or I. So we'll jump into those at the end if we have time. As always, we will start the podcast with sponsors, ways to support the podcast, shout outs, read, listen, watch, and then we will get into the questions. So there are 4 ways for you to support what we do. Number 1 is the easiest one, the most important one. Head to the link in bio on our social media and get signed up for one of our programs. We have competitor programming from the open to quarterfinals, to semifinals and CrossFit Games level athletes. We have our GPP program for the everyday athlete working out on their own. And we have Misfit affiliate for affiliates out there. So yeah, you get signed up for any one of those. It is also, we're entering the final countdown here. We're about 2 weeks out from Misfit training camp at CrossFit Roots in Boulder, Colorado, January 30th through February 1st. Tickets are still available. We've got a really good sized group right now. I normally don't shut the ticket sales off until a week out, but if we did get a bunch more here in the next week or so, I would probably turn those off just to make sure that we maintain a really good coach to athlete ratio. Again, get signed up for that open and quarterfinals prep style camp. Really cool place to be in the winter. Boulder's beautiful. It's right up against the mountains, and flying into Denver this time of year is pretty cool. Although I live in Colorado now and there's no snow. The part of Colorado that I live in doesn't really get snow, but apparently the mountains don't have very much either, which is kind of weird mid-January.
It's weird.
Not last but not least. Number 3 is head to sharpentheaxeco.com. There's still a few items left from the Rain or Shine pre-sale. You guys can snag those. And we will be dropping at some point in Q1 the SSE Racing Team powered by Rocket Fuel collection. Really excited about this design, excited for you guys to see that. Now, last but not least, I'm gonna be really straightforward with this one. So we are sponsored by Gorilla Mind. Podcast is sponsored by Gorilla Mind. You can head to gorillamind.com/misfit or use the code word misfit to save. I think these are the best supplements in the game. The guy who started this company was the inspiration for me starting Proper, which obviously does not exist anymore. So kind of back there. And I'm going to tell you right now that I am asking you, unless you buy your supplements at Costco or you buy one of those bags, the size of my whole body from Amazon that has all kinds of arsenic and whatnot in it when tested by Consumer Reports, switch over to Gorilla Mind. You're supporting the podcast. You're getting really, really high quality supplements. If you're watching on YouTube, right there is Gorilla Mode pre-workout. Did a first gear, my worst gear, Echo Bike this morning, and my RPMs and mindset during the session are different with a scoop of that. So I'm just going to kind of throw that out there. Definitely notice a difference. Guarantee that if I went back and did a, one aerobic session, or one aerobic session with it, one without it, and went back and forth, I would get a higher output at a lower heart rate. Definitely something that I've noticed. So gorillamind.com/misfit, switch over, buy your supplements from them. They're better and you support the podcast. Okay. We did it. Shout outs. I want to shout out the people. So the Misfit Mind post this week, actually wrote a couple weeks ago. Finally got to post it yesterday, just in terms of timing with everything else. And it was one that was very important to me on a personal and professional level. But like when I'm writing them, the question is, the more it means to me, the harder it can be to write it because it can be a little bit more convoluted essentially. And it seemed to hit home maybe a little bit more than some of the other ones. Like upon sharing it, I got notifications of like probably 20 people shared it to their story very quickly, which is rare. So just shout out to people reading that and absorbing it. It's just the kind of lesson that's important to me, again, personally, professionally. So really cool to see people resonate with that.
Yeah, that is pretty exciting. I've barely been on social media, so I haven't yet to read it, but I got to get on there. But it makes me excited to get on there because it's like there's something I can go look at. I'm going to give a shout out to everybody that has been doing the habit stacking that we're doing in
Yes.
Telegram. There's a good crew in there, and they were very active on week 1. So week 1 habit was making sure we're getting in our warm-ups properly. So kind of an easy win for, I think, a majority of our athletes. They're very good at making sure they get their sweat check in. So week 2, we're doing what we call finish the curve, right? From that endurance community you like to talk about a lot. So making sure people are cooling down properly. And already on day 1, I could see people are plugging in their stuff. So Kyle Moline, Pete Naz, McKenna, Chris Livingston, Stephanie Clisham, Grace Rockwell, you guys are all being active in there. And I appreciate that because we put the time into making that. And we'll try to keep you guys cruising through the next couple weeks. I think weeks 3 and 4 are kind of where people are going to want to like dip away from it. But again, we'll try to keep the conversation going around it. So if you guys can hang through these weeks, I think you'll see some positive changes in your performances over there.
My schedule today is a little screwy, and I felt guilty because of this, because I did an 8-minute cool down, but I was like, okay, but I got to go get my shake. So I'm going to see if I can keep my heart rate like up over 100 while like jogging the like 10 feet to my house and putting the stuff in a cup and then running back into my office. So I think I was pretty close. I'm going to go back and look at the stats, but I think I was pretty close. Yeah. All right.
There's a couple people in there too. Their names are in there, but there's a couple empty cells. So maybe we can get you guys up in there.
Yeah. Get in there, go on Telegram, click that bad boy, and fill in your warm-up and your cool down. All right, read, listen, watch. I have for read, now this is a situation where the spelling and the pronunciation are not similar. So if you are trying to buy this or download it, it is phonetically Tao Te Ching, Taoteching, but it's pronounced Dao De Jing. And the Misfit Mind post is loosely based on this because Lao Tzu is attributed to that quote, which he definitely did not say. He didn't really have like lengthy things like that. It was his quotes were usually, 2 or 3 words. But I heard that quote and then went in to do some research, found that it was misattributed to him, but also like there are periods of time where maybe a shorter book like The 5 Rings or Dao De Jing or anything like that has like kind of lessons throughout it, I will keep in my backpack and just reference those things on a regular basis. And that was one that stayed in my backpack for like 3 to 6 months and is really powerful and is very much about the idea that the like small, unseen, subtle, quiet things in our lives that are done on a regular basis are what shape what actually happens in our life. And I think a lot of times we get that backwards, get a little bit out of alignment with, the thoughts we have and then how they're sort of put out into the world. So short read, very powerful. There's different translations. I don't know how it would be listening to it. I think if I listened to it, just because of my attention span, I would have to listen to it more than once, but it is short. It'd be the kind of thing that I would like probably loop to get the things down. But again, very digestible, very short read thing, a thing where you can sort of take one of the lessons and kind of move forward with it. The next one, I'm always on the fence about sharing this stuff. And it's funny because I am a fan of Chris Williamson, who does Modern Wisdom, and I'm a fan of Andrew Huberman, which I think everybody knows. But I think a lot of the content is too long form and too convoluted. I don't love the idea of the general population listening to the complexity of Huberman and then being like, all right, my morning routine needs to be 6.5 hours long. But it's good when there are pieces in there that we can really use. So towards the front of the episode, there is a conversation about cortisol, melatonin, sleep, that I think it does a really fantastic job of explaining what you should try to accomplish in the first half or the first hour of your day to then sleep really well and sort of set yourself up to have a good circadian rhythm and whatnot. So I would say, in my opinion, half of that podcast is worth listening to. So if you're like a workout and podcast background noise kind of person, go for it. If not, clips is probably the better way to go. And doing the clip on cortisol, melatonin, and sleep is good. Last but not least, I love British crime dramas.
Good.
Which means I have a BritBox subscription on Prime. It's like a little add-on. And
That's so funny.
You stop it, Paige.
I didn't
Over
know
here
that was
watching
a
like
thing.
Matlock. Oh yeah. And season 3 of Blue Lights is out. I would say it's definitely my top 10, which is a crazy thing to say about British crime dramas that I have 10. I do have 10. But like of active ones, probably down in the top 5. So anyone who gets into that world that needs to know the rest of them, you DM me and I will tell you which shows to watch. But Blue Lights is pretty good, but you do need the BritBox edition to Prime. So you need your 75th add-on that you forget to get rid of. I got like Acorn TV and BritBox, and it's a mess, but Blue Lights, go watch it.
Let's see. I'm going to start with Watch because it's just a quick one right off the top of my head.
Yep.
2 friends of mine and myself, we went and saw Housemaid in theaters. It's with Sydney Sweeney and shoot, I forget her name every time, but she's Karen from Mean Girls. You know, the blonde?
Amanda Seyfried?
How do you know that? We talked about this last week. How do you know these things?
You don't want, yeah.
Anyway, it is so good. It's very suspense, very thriller. And I don't know. I thought it was over at one point, and then all of a sudden the movie like actually started, and it was very good. Like edge of your seat kind of movie. I just feel like I've been to a movie in a while. Haven't been to a movie in a while that's been like, whoa. Besides Wicked, but that's different. This was a very good movie. So Housemaid is my watch. My read, the new guidelines came out, like the new dietary guidelines, like FDA. So I've been like looking into that. Pretty interesting to see all of the changes that they're making there. I'm sure some people have some opinions on it, but you know, the push towards like real whole foods, the emphasis on protein, being aware of processed foods, like it's kind of a cool change to see. Doesn't really feel like revolutionary, but it's, I think, honest, which is pretty neat. I'm sure there's some things to criticize about it. I just haven't looked enough in detail. So I'm still kind of, you know, here and there when I can, popping in and checking that stuff out.
The
Have you read it?
politicized angle of it bores the shit out of me.
Yeah.
Like I'll fall asleep talking about that. I'm just over that, like part of our country. So it's like, do we need to bring that into this conversation? But yes, obviously the changes being more in line with like the general population's burning, their metabolic rate is so low that like, do you need a lot of fat and carbs? And the answer is no,
right.
Not really.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Just the big picture, I think, shift on like food quality is pretty cool to see.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially in our country compared to, you know, what you might see in like Europe. And then let me find it. Where do I have it? I started listening to a podcast. It's called How I Built This by Guy Raz. So it's essentially like people who like start up companies from scratch or from nothing.
Yep.
So I just started listening to that. I'll probably listen to it more on Thursday when I get into my zone too. But I'm on an episode about, I've kind of like my intro episode right now is listening to the guy who established Five Guys. I just kind of picked one. So kind of neat. I figured it's just a little bit of a different perspective of, you know, maybe building a business or different approaches that people take when they're starting from scratch. Or I'm excited to see kind of the ways that it relates to like performance in the gym and things like that. So I'll have more on that soon.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. I am going to open the Q&A with one that just made me laugh. I got a DM from Paige's remote client that said, brother, ... I think one day on the podcast, you could explain the difference between pacing and gamifying. And like, this one's fun because there's like, Paige and I have talked about this. So Paige is now, you know, weekly on the podcast with me, and, you know, you have to kind of learn my vernacular and I might go off on a tangent. And there's just like, it probably took me at least 2 years to be able to like free flow on a podcast. It's just a different setting. And then eventually you forget. The goal for me is to forget what you're doing and just have a conversation, that kind of thing. But there's the like, who's been listening forever? So who has the like Misfit dictionary? And we always have people coming in and out of subscriptions and listening and, you know, new listeners and all of that. So Paige will try to keep me in line with that because I think she represents, you know, the like Hunter and I having a shorthand for almost a decade. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. But then you guys can send me messages like this, and that will also be helpful because to me, whatever terminology, especially we're in this industry where it's like we have to make up terminology for things that hasn't necessarily existed before. So to answer the actual question, gamifying a workout is strategizing to get the absolute best score, regardless of like, oh, I'm going really hard at this point. I'm going slow at this point. I'm, doing singles when everybody else is doing, unbroken, transitions, and like how quickly can I get my feet into the rower. Like there was one year that you and McKenna were doing a workout together, filmed, and you caught her every round because of how you started rowing. She was beating you by almost 10 seconds a round, and you caught her every single round because of how quickly you got into the rower and started rowing. So gamifying is, I'm not trying to get fitter right now, like really strategizing to get the absolute best score in a competition setting or in a testing setting. Pacing would be more like to get what I really should out of this workout. Again, and this is training, testing, competing across the board. Like, what sort of drop off am I looking at across a workout? Like, is it possible to like have even rounds? Is it possible to start conservative and then be able to push at the end and maybe even make up some time so you negative split a workout? On the shorter end, more power output style, like how much drop off is okay? And these are going to change workout to workout, but pacing is very much like, what are my round splits? How does the workout go? What happens to my heart rate throughout the whole thing? That sort of deal. So hopefully that cleans some of that up. And again, if I'm ever speaking in that way and you guys want a clarification, just let me know and we'll jump right back in. Okay. Actual question number 1. Okay. Zone 2. Say we have 30 minutes or less left before we have to leave. Better to just hit a shorter zone 2, assuming that's all that's left for the day, or is it not worthwhile? I assume it's similar to something is better than nothing, but I don't recall where I have heard something about the lines of shorter zone 2, 20 minutes or less as the example I heard elsewhere, held no benefits. Thoughts? Well, I'm going to start at the back. The no benefits thing is insane. Non-exercise movement, going for a walk, moving your body, cooling down, fantastic. So the no benefits thing is kind of silly. If you are trying to make a significant change to your aerobic like conditioning, yes, you need to be in there 1, 2, 3, 4 hours a week doing that. One thing that's interesting though is we can make changes on a machine through exposure that aren't necessarily going to make massive differences in our aerobic output. So is that still worth, like you shouldn't do it? It's not worth anything. And the answer to that, of course, is no. So what I would say here is this sounds to me like we can create a gray area between zone 2 and cool down. I don't want someone leaving the gym like off the bike at 140, 150, 160 beats per minute and just out the door. I don't want that. But if you had 30 minutes left and you started at zone 2 and you trickled down to zone 1, you would get exposure to the machine, you would burn calories, you would have more movement, all of that stuff. So it's not like traditional, let's log the hours sort of a thing. But if this is happening on a regular basis, it definitely has a benefit. Right? I think the argument that we are hearing on a regular basis that is more kind of semantics and nuance than anything else is if you're dedicating a ton of your time to zone 2 and not to the other stuff, you're missing the point of what the sport is. And that's absolutely true. I'm working on another full episode for this. I think it's time to just redefine certain things and talk through. The way that I'm writing it is based on the spectrum of who needs none of it and who needs a lot of it.
Yeah.
And where do you sit as an athlete in between? And we'll probably come up with like 5 or 6 different types of athlete. So I'm not sure that I answered the question specific to zone 2, but maybe I answered what could be of benefit for somebody.
Yeah, I think I have okay, is it 30 minutes or left in a full training session? Is it just like I'm coaching today and I have a 30-minute window to do something? Like, can it be?
No, it sounds like they're at the end of their training session and they've got 30 minutes left, but that's it. And they want to do zone 2 because it's one of the mandatory things for the week.
Yeah.
Should they do it?
Yeah. Sounds like maybe you pick a day to prioritize that if you're not getting any in,
Sure. Yep.
So.
Yeah. All right.
Cool.
Question number 2. And also, Paige, welcome to the Q&A conundrum of not having the full background on the question. that is always fun.
True.
So take it in some different directions.
All right.
How should I balance online qualifiers with training / scheduled programming? Should I just sub out a conditioning piece with my online qualifier or do both, perhaps on different days?
I mean, I guess there's a couple different ways to approach that. What time of year is it? What qualifier is it? Are there multiple qualifier workouts in a weekend, or are we just prioritizing one? So I'll go kind of like prioritizing one every weekend if that were the way it would go. And I very much think you'll get some ideas of how to approach that right now if you're following our programming, because we're going to do open sim on Fridays, and you can kind of figure out around those right now what would work best for you. So again, assuming this is someone that's following our training, for example, this upcoming Friday, we have MFA 26.1, and we also have an additional rowing piece for conditioning on that day. So I would think you'd want to, number one, prioritize that, warm up properly, cool down properly, and then kind of see how you feel for a second session. But I feel like time of year is important too. So, if you are kind of in the midst of training volumes fairly high, I would very much say 2 sessions in a day would be acceptable. As long as you're prioritizing, like, if this online qualifier is important to you, then like that workout needs to be prioritized so that you get the highest placement on the leaderboard for it. And then you can kind of balance the training around that. If there's no lifting involved, or, you can still hit a lift that day, you can get an additional bitch work piece in. So yeah, I think obviously a little more context here is good, but I feel like, again, if you can follow phase 3 right now, you're going to get some ideas of how to approach an upcoming online qualifier. You say that's pretty fair?
I think so. The proximity to the season thing is incredibly important. So if these are in the fall or the spring after quarterfinals, like, give yourself a primer day and like really do it the way that it should be done. The other things to consider are how much do you want to qualify and how hard is it to qualify? So if I've got an athlete who, like, part of their season plan is to go compete at this thing and they need to qualify, then I am going to put it as the first piece coming off of a rest day, probably a rest day that has zone 2. So they kind of feel like they got their body moving. They don't feel stiff. And then the way that I would structure programming would be, do we have this like incredible, really good long warm up? Do we have a good cool down afterwards? And then we have maybe like a little buffet of like, okay, that was quick and dirty and I feel great. Let's go, do a lift, do a skill, doing conditioning, whatever. Or like, that whooped my ass. What do you think I should do? And it's like, maybe we can hit an upper body lift that doesn't do much to the CNS, do a reps or a skill session, and then flush and kind of be done with it. So the other instance would be, I just want to do this to see where I'm going to land, or like, I'm going to this competition, like I work with enough athletes, I'm going to this competition to like beat the shit out of everybody and take the prize. And like the qualifiers are a bit of a throwaway. So it's like, all right, like, we're still lifting first.
Yeah.
Then you're going to do this. Then you're going to do your skill, that kind of thing. So I definitely think those proximity to season, how much you care about qualifying, and then how hard it is to qualify are definitely things to think about. And the cool thing about the way we do these Q&As is we can give advice to more people than just one specific question. And then when you have the actual qualifier and you want our help, Telegram. Like, we're there, We're going to help you. Your peers are going to help you, that sort of thing. All right. Do you see value in competition exposure even as a young rising athlete who may not be a top performer? I love competing through online qualifiers and local comps because I like the practice of strategizing and executing, but there's a part of me that often wants to wait until I'm better at this or that, which is a losing approach because the goalposts are constantly moving. If you follow our programming and you're not competing 1 to 3 times a year, I don't know what the fuck's going on. You can't be, what kind of hobby is this? It's too hard, right?
That's
true.
I think you're
like, I think you can get into that gray area of training where it's like, I'm going pretty hard. I don't really know why I'm doing this. You know what I mean? Like, some people are just athletes through and through and they get into that mode. So you got to compete. Like, it's the only true litmus test. Because we have people who have no clue how good they are until they compete. And we have people who have no clue how bad they are at competing until they compete, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they'll smash you on a Tuesday in their gym, right? Their bar, their, temperature, their music, their whatever. And then, there's a bunch of people in the stands and they don't do well. So you got to go compete because it's the only thing that's going to truly tell you where you're at.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a balance to it as well. Competing in online qualifiers, the goal is to likely get to an in-person competition. So again, you're competing and learning and strategizing through those qualifiers, but also if you qualify, you have 2 months until that competition pops up. And if you want to take it seriously, run through a peaking schedule, and that will show you, you just kind of get more experience by doing something like that, where you learn how to gradually increase training volume and intensity over time and how to deload for a competition. Again, that's something that we are, this is what we live and breathe and do. So, if that is where you're at, reach out to us, and it's something we could help you with as well.
I think the one thing I want to add here is the permission and the full on request to be vulnerable as an athlete. I'm going to do this, and I really care about it, and I really want to prep for it. So many people give themselves the excuse of, well, I don't really care about this. So there's just that one little piece just in case they don't do well. And I'm telling you, you're not going to do as well. I've got your back. Paige has your back. Everyone in Telegram is going to have your back, and everyone else can fuck off, basically. So really just if you're going to do something like that, let yourself make a big deal out of it.
Yeah.
Online qualifier, local comp, the whole thing. If people at the local comp think you're a hardo, maybe you are a hardo. And congratulations, right? So I think that piece of it is incredibly important, because I've worked with people who were on the opposite side of this, and I've lost top level athletes because they know how I feel about a qualifier every fucking Wednesday and way too many competitions and that whole thing. And it's we're going to get any work done? That whole deal. So there's definitely a spectrum to this, but I think within the context of this question, the answer is compete and make it feel like a big deal regardless of what level you're at.
Yeah. And especially, I mean, as a young athlete, those competitions are stepping stones for you. I started at local competitions. That got me to regionals, that got me to competing on a team. I could say the same about McKenna, any close athlete that I'm working with right now or talking to. It's we all had stepping stones. So again, like you said, take it seriously.
All right. How do you coach athletes who are highly self-aware and disciplined, but also prone to over-analysis or execution? Where do you want them to trust the process versus self-regulate?
I think a lot of it can also be, I think the proof is in the data, right? So if you are constantly showing progress in your training, again, that trusting the process is right in front of you. I feel like what do you mean self-regulating? How would you explain that if you were to read this question to somebody?
Where do you want them to trust the process versus self-regulate? So I think it's more trusting the process is very much, I'm going to go in, I'm going to read the thing that I'm supposed to do, and then I'm going to go do it. Whereas the self-regulation, you might be relying on yourself a little bit more to decide what things you need to do, what you might need to change, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Ooh. Man.
It's a deep one.
Yeah, that is. I have so much experience too with this.
Yep.
I don't know. I feel like there was a lot of decision making. The decision making didn't come until I saw proof in trusting the process first, if that makes sense. I relied heavily on Gabe, back, especially when I was first starting, of what should I do? How do I modify this? Listen, my back hurts. How do I change this up? And I very much put my trust in him. And again, in the training process and in the methodology and in the hitting stimulus, all that kind of stuff. And as I got older and as I started paying more attention to how my body is feeling and patterns and things like that, that's, I think, kind of when that self-regulating would come in of Drew, I do this movement on Tuesday and then X movement on Wednesday, and I really feel my back flare up from that combination. So there are times when that would happen. And I think feedback is more important as far as what kind of feedback are you giving your coach if you're working with somebody?
Yeah. Is someone self-aware if they are overanalyzing? You know what I mean? That to me sounds like a bit of a feedback loop, and maybe we think there's an equal sign there and there might be a slash. between the equal sign. I think this person specifically would need to rely on other people a little bit more often. I think what comes to mind for me personally is coaches need coaches. Like if I had like a really big goal, I would pay the money to hire somebody to be like, teach me how to do bodybuilding, like get me ready for this race, like that kind of thing. Because there is an element to that trusting the process. Once there is trust built there, I was having a conversation with a remote athlete recently, and it was like there are times of year where some athletes want a bit of a like choose your own adventure, like choose 2 of these. And there are other athletes like, don't you dare. Like, I want to just do the stuff. I don't want to think about this.
Yeah.
Like, why do I have a coach if like that kind of thing? So yeah, I think in this instance, I would have, so it's, the very first question is, how would you coach an athlete like that? And I would have very specific instructions for that athlete on a daily basis. Like, get the analysis out. I want you at this pace here. I want these broken up into 2 sets. The only thing you get to decide is how long it's going to take you to transition to be able to make those things happen. And I think this person probably lives on that side of dealing with like having a lot of information and maybe a little bit too much information.
Mm-hmm.
And every once in a while, there's an athlete in the sport, like, I don't want to call anyone out, but like you think of like a James Sprague, where I feel like that dude's just in the moment, just getting after it and pushing, that kind of thing. And you can see some of the more cerebral athletes struggle in big moments because of overanalysis. So I don't know, we kind of answered the question, we kind of answered other questions, but hopefully that gives some insight. If you just got a little bit too much info, rely on somebody else to help you with that stuff.
Yeah. I think the more I'm like reading this and I'm like thinking about, there's probably a lot of, if you're overanalyzing, you're over executing, there's definitely going to be more than necessary, like negative self-talk. So it sounds like regardless of.
And like questioning, right?
Yeah, right. Like it sounds like you just need somebody to kind of bounce off of. So whether it's a coach or a friend, like, can you turn your training into a little bit more like black and white? Like, I'm going to hold this pace, and if I hold that pace, that's my win for the day.
Yeah, for sure. All right. What mindset shift do you think most athletes resist but actually need in order to continue progressing long term? Oh, goodness. It's like,
we'll see you on the next podcast. That will be one question.
So incredibly vague, right? Most athletes. What do I see the most of? Probably the percentage of training over the course of the long term that they think is going to go like incredibly well. Most athletes, especially ones that are in their 20s, just lose their mind when they have a bad training session. And it's like, okay, let's do the math. I got 4 things in here for you every day. So we get 20 pieces a week. And honestly, that's not even the whole truth if you count the holds and the warm-ups and the cool downs and the zone 2s and the flush days and all that stuff. So let's do the math out for a year. The amount of training sessions that you do that go well is actually staggering. It's actually absurdly impressive. But the context that makes it so challenging, and this is top of mind because I just talked about it with someone, is how do you maintain really high standards so that you keep progressing, but sort of throw those sessions in the trash and then pick your high standards right back up, like immediately, like the next session, the next day, that whole deal. So I think that's the most often is like, I want to get better at this skill immediately. I don't understand why. We did one phase where we focused on the rower, and then I rowed with somebody else that's a foot taller than me and they're better. Like, just things like that happen. And it's like, if you're going to progress long term, you need to realize what happens when you overreach, because we can stay below that threshold and get just barely better ever, or we can go above that threshold and continuously get better and have really, great retest numbers. 80% of our retests are good, and accept the fact that like, we're going to ask you to do too much every once in a while, because we got to find that line. We're never going to know where it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you can take what we call monsoon season, and let's say you have an athlete that has like a 4-year plan. Well, years 2 and 3 are going to feel like that monsoon season, and like you're not going to want to, it's going to be really hard to stick to it, right? It's hard to trust the process for years at a time. And I think, to me, that's where people start to just veer off, and it's like, all right, I'm just going to change my goal. So yeah, I think it's being able to pretty similar, like, stick to the details, stick to, if you're working with a coach, there's a plan in place and it's meant to get you there in a specific time frame. At least that's the goal.
All right. At what point does work ethic stop being an advantage and start becoming a liability? And how can athletes tell the difference?
Why a liability?
You don't think it can ever be a liability, somebody's work ethic?
Like you're working too hard?
Yeah, working too hard, doing too much, that kind of thing.
Okay. I wasn't really thinking as far as like working too much. Again, I think your data, you have proof in the data. Is your training starting to plummet?
Yeah.
I'd say that's when that hard work is starting to become a disadvantage for you. So I don't know. That one seems a little simple as far as like, how are you feeling overall? Are your stress levels super high? Are you trying to force through things? Are you finding nagging injuries are sticking around longer? I think there's some pretty like physical responses that your body's going to kind of tell
Yep.
you like, hey, let's, back off a little bit. And if you try pushing through those things, then that's when you're going to start to see the negative impacts of it.
I have a pretty good history with different athletes relating to this, and I think it is more semantics and definition than anything else. I've come to the understanding over time, you just work with more and more athletes that have different strengths and weaknesses and mindsets and backgrounds, and whatever it takes equals whatever it takes. And a lot of people are not in tune with what that is. So to me, if someone has the work ethic that we need to accomplish their goals, they're not skipping their couch stretch or their squat holds or their warm-ups or their skill sessions, or like I've worked with really strong athletes that won't take weight off the bar and learn how to move it so that they can actually move it in Metcon. Like it's just, so I think what your definition is of that is incredibly important. And then the other piece would be, do you drive yourself into the ground in that, like, I think there are athletes that do all of it, that do the, they're weighing and measuring their food, they're sleeping 9 hours, they're doing the whole thing, they're being really perfect in the energy that it takes to accomplish that gets them to a point where they're like, I think I'm going to quit. I don't want to do this anymore. And it's like, that is a very confusing, like going from, I'm going to give this everything I have to I don't want to do it anymore. So I think there's potentially a realistic world where you live in. And sometimes whatever it takes is getting yourself to chill out a little bit and not be quite as like type A. So I think definitions are important related to that for sure.
Yeah, we talked with McKenna about that too, right? Like she went from having a full-time job to being part-time right now. And
yeah,
what do I do with all this free time? Well, partly you need to chill out. Like you do. You need to hang out and relax and like give that to your nervous system. You've been go, go, go for how long? And now your training the intensity is going to up a little bit because you have that time to relax.
Yeah, professional true double sessions require so much, like fully down regulated, like sitting on a couch on the floor with a foam roller time. And I don't think she'll mind me saying this. She was sick and did a test after we were like, you're sick, we're obviously not doing this today. And then she did it and she didn't do well. And it was like, okay, what did we learn today? And she's like, I can't judge myself for like, I don't have a job to do today. And it's like, yeah, but you're sick. You're sick. When you're sick, be like a dude, be a huge baby about it, stay in bed, like the covers up. I don't get to do that anymore because I got a kid, but like dudes can be real. Man flu is real. You get very sensitive. So try like the guilt that people have related to resting and really letting their body. Yeah, that's a really good point. All right. We are moving on to some questions from social media. How to fix nutrition in order to improve training and body composition. Okay, so this is very broad, but I mean, there is an answer to this question. It just feels like I'm going to give a really generic answer. You need to weigh and measure your food. You need to get roughly a gram per pound of protein, and you need to have 20 to 30% of your calories come from fat so that your hormone levels are where they need to be. If you want to really get into the nitty gritty. You got to know what kind of fat your body can handle in terms of your lipid profile, if we're talking about like longevity, etc. And then depending on how much you're training, how many calories you're burning, I want to cut, I want to maintain, I want to grow. The rest of it's got to be carbohydrate. And if you do train a lot, you need quick digestible forms of carbohydrate because, again, you get the person who's like, I think Brent Fikowski's the only guy I've ever seen eat 800 grams of rice post-Metcon. You got other people dry heaving, trying to eat sandwiches in the back, and then they realize, Kenzie's in the corner with her candy and her bagels and stuff. So, I mean, I don't really know. I think the nutrition piece is more adherence, is why we need all of the conversations about it and why we need, nutrition coaches can be incredibly valuable. Most of us know what to do. Doing it on a regular basis, It's like doing it right is kind of inconvenient. When you're training, you get the blood sugar and the cortisol is potentially going up and down a little bit more because you're stressed out, and then you want to eat things that you shouldn't eat at different times. So, I mean, you've been through a lot more of this than I have, but it's, to me, more of a question of adherence than it is specifics.
Yeah, I mean, nutrition, sleep is another one. Like, how is your sleep? Is it matching up with the training? Like, to me, nutrition and sleep and training all need to match up. That makes sense for what you're trying to accomplish. So if you are in that high intensity phase of training and you're trying to go super low carb, like there's just not a match there, really. So it is hard to answer such a broad question. But I also, I have had a lot of success working with a nutrition coach.
Maybe that's the answer.
Yeah, I've been very educated that way too. Yeah. So if you are not familiar with nutrition, I think that if you have the means to do that, can really help you kind of set on the right foot. So
yeah, for sure. All right, so we're alternating back and forth, and Paige has to answer this question first. So, Drew, what happened with your 225 strict press, and what's your guys' favorite Olympic lifting complex? Paige, what happened?
Life, it gets in the way, busy season.
Yeah. I can actually answer that question. I did hurt myself while doing it, and I'm trying to remember, it's been a while now, but we had a full-time media person at Misfit Athletics, and then we didn't. And I got promoted from CEO to CMO. I got them all. Whatever. I do call myself Chief Meathead. That's the only title that I will accept. So timing was huge with that, and I did hurt myself. I got myself to, I think so when I tested, I hadn't done it in forever. I did 190 pretty easily, and then 195, there's a little wiggle in there. So I didn't really count that. In 16 weeks, I got to 170 by 7, which for me is close to as hard, if not harder. I'm a 1 rep max guy. I'm not a 7 guy for sure. And it honestly doesn't matter whether that's 7 calories or 7 miles or whatever it is. So I a rental house right now until our house is done being built. And then I am building the garage gym of my dreams. And I will be honest with you guys about whether there are any enhancements related to whether I ever hit a 225, or I will hit it for sure. I made enough progress in that period of time that I kind of know that I can do that. The program that I was on works really well. So if people want it, they can have it. It's a 3-day rotation that I started out 3 times a week, but that was too much on my shoulders. So I switched to 2 of the 3 sessions basically in rotation. And again, got myself to a pretty good spot. But once you have like your shoulders bothering you a little and you're doing 8 different movements and 3 to 5 to 6 sets per week, it's really hard to deal with. So yeah, that's what happened. But I'm coming back. My favorite Olympic lifting complex is the original Misfit clean complex: power clean, push jerk, front squat, hang squat, clean, split jerk. I think I got to like 270 on that one. I think
so much time under tension.
Yeah, with my tiny hands too. I have to like hide the bar in my hip and wiggle all around. And
I actually really like the one that we're currently doing. I think we're doing it with cleans right now, right?
The double or the triple?
I like the triple.
Yeah,
I
the
think I
one
was
the
I was
one right
doing the
now is
EMOM for a while.
heavier as a double.
Yeah.
The one that we have been doing was the above knee, below knee floor, I believe.
Yeah. I really
Yeah.
I really love a below the knee position. Man, it floats. So getting to work like top and bottom on that in a complex, I really like because I feel like I can find that position better, especially when the last rep comes from the floor.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. All right. What do you wish the average affiliate person knew more about bettering their health? Well, if I only get to pick one thing, it's definitely non-exercise movement. Because we get a lot of people in the affiliate where you can tell that the calorie consumption versus expenditure is just off. And they're probably wondering what the heck is going on. And, having gotten myself to that strength to body weight ratio for whatever level of gymnastics they're going after, they probably have much better health markers than they did. They've learned to go hard, short, medium, and long, but making sure that you're not parked in a chair every other second, desk chair, in your car seat, and then, onto the couch, like that kind of thing. Because that happens a lot. And you're doing the hardest part and maybe not doing the easier parts.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like CrossFit's a lot harder than like 1 cup of rice instead of 2 cups of rice. CrossFit's a lot harder than like, I'm going to sit on my phone for X amount of time versus going for a walk, that kind of thing. So I think there's a lot of different ones, but I think that's, to me, the number one thing that I see where it's like, this person is really fit, but they have not figured out that world, and it's going to hold them back, especially when they get a little bit older.
Yeah. That's a good answer. I'm just like, what do I wish the average affiliate person knew? I'm like, well, if you have good coaches, can you just listen? Can you just listen to your coach?
We're trying to help. Do you know that?
Yeah, I think hopefully, your gym is following some well-rounded programming, or your owners are doing some well-rounded programming that you can understand the differences between like going hard in something that is long duration versus going hard in something that is in short duration, and really trying to understand stimulus. I feel like understanding stimulus and intensity is something that like a lot of times people want to go in, the average affiliate person wants to go in and burn calories, and there's so much more to fitness. And, if you get a little open-minded and curious about it, learning some of those things can really benefit you. And, if it is for bettering your health, learning low intensity, high intensity, where I can go really hard and where I can't, can really, help, the non-exercise movement, very low intensity, right? So I think that, kind of learning that spectrum there is really helpful.
Yeah, we had this conversation a lot at the gym in Maine about like, I think one of the best examples, we talk about it all of the time, but the 20-minute AMRAP, the row, double under deadlift. And like, there's the world of, well, I don't really care what my score is. Like, I'm here, I have a gym membership. You guys are doing this crazy shit and you're obsessed with it. Congratulations. I'm just trying to get fit. And it's like, that person was in zone 5 for probably 15 of 20 minutes. Like, that's pretty good, right? Like, that's what we want.
Yeah.
But then if we go back to the strength to body weight ratio thing, the other person is doing a lot more deadlifts than you. They are in a different workout doing more pull-ups than you, more push-ups than you, more whatever. And manipulating muscle tissue is going to go a super long ways in body composition. So there's like a 1 step back, 5 step forward situation where if you learn to pace over time, your body composition is going to change drastically because you're doing 60 push-ups instead of 25 or however many deadlifts, that sort of thing. So there's, like said a million times, I think CrossFit is the greatest strength accessory program ever written, because it's like, well, yeah, I know that you do 6x10 leg extension, but that guy just did like 600 walking lunges. Like,
Yeah.
you don't have that beat. But if you can't pace, you don't hit those numbers, and you're definitely working on the cardiovascular system, but not dealing with the fact that like you can get pretty jacked by doing a whole lot of air squats, pull-ups, push-ups, that kind of thing.
Mhm. That's a good point.
All right. What age is prime for CrossFit athletes typically, and differences in male versus female?
Got me to
You're up,
answer
Paige.
this? I don't know.
Yep.
Kind of all over the board, if we're being honest. I think more so maybe your training age, I'd say, has a bit to do with it too.
Mhm.
Like for me personally, I hit my peak like 2024 and I was still like finding like my ceiling. And again, that I was 32. Then you have an athlete like McKenna, who's 27, who is like rising through her fitness. And then there's someone like Annika Greer, who's maybe 22, and also had a phenomenal year this year. I don't know if I can really speak to age. I mean, Brooke Wells is going to be maybe 32, 33, retiring this year. Had an incredible season, had an incredible career. I don't know.
Mhm.
I don't know if I have much of an opinion on age, really.
There's too many variables to bring into this question. Typically, women are going to perform better for longer, but that's not always the case. We just have significantly more instances of women doing the like, well, I might qualify Indy, I might qualify Masters, like that sort of deal.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a level of, like I've talked about it before, on the remote coaching side, working with women can be, easier because of the humility. So like the ego piece of a male potentially stopping sooner because they're not sure whether they can do it. What is incredibly important about this is like not getting wrapped up in the number if you're doing what you should be doing. I think that to me is the angle that I would take in talking through this with somebody. Because this person's probably wondering, like, what's going to happen to me? And it's like,
Yeah.
are you going to continue to iterate? Are you going to continue to figure out, like, the only people that I give 2 lifts and 2 conditioning pieces to year round are men between the age of like 19 and 21, somewhere in that range. And part of it is me asking them to tap out, because they're begging for more volume. And it's like the only way that I can show them that they don't need more volume is by answering, like being like, yes. And then finally they compete at the games and then it's October and they're like, dude, leave me alone. And it's like, finally, like that kind of thing. So like continuing to iterate and knowing that like once you have a really great base, there are periods of time during the year where anything more than lift, metcon, and skill is probably little bit too much later in your career. So if you're doing the right things, you should ignore the shit out of that question. Use that question to give yourself context for what you should be doing to continue to improve. But I've had this argument with 20 different coaches. I've never, ever, ever seen someone reach their genetic potential. Not once. I've never worked with someone where I've been like, that's it, they're tapped out. Like, we can't improve this thing. It's never happened. So I'm waiting for that shit to happen. And like, if somebody trails off because their priorities change, that to me is not the same question, the same
Right.
set of questions that we would be asking.
Yeah. I mean, you can just take a look at the leaderboard at the games. The age is kind of all over in World Fitness Project, like a lot of the same athletes in there. But yeah, working with masters athletes right now who are still like, wow, my ceiling is so much higher than I thought it was, right? So they're still searching for some of that maybe it's kind of a newfound like excitement for, what they can accomplish. And they're just realizing that too.
All right. What's your advice on getting into functional shape, lifting and walking now for 4 months? First and foremost, that's like the best place to start. That's
Off.
amazing. Like people start at the end and wonder why they quit, right? They just pile all of this shit on and it doesn't work. So having that momentum is incredibly important. And I think there are a bunch of different avenues that you could go in from here. Whenever I'm helping a friend, like a muggle, that just doesn't know our world and they want to get into, they're like, should I do cardio? And it's like, what are you talking about? You don't elevate your heart rate? You're going to die when you're 66. Stop it. I recommend at least 48 hours of recovery between. I don't like driving somebody into the ground right at the beginning of this. And I know that this can be like a little antithetical. One answer, one beautiful answer, one answer that I believe in wholeheartedly is go sign up for OnRamp. Go find an affiliate and sign up. and get to it. And if you need suggestions, we have a network of people literally across the entire world that can help you find the best affiliate in your area. But getting your heart rate elevated as part of this, once a week and then twice a week and then 3 times a week, and giving yourself kind of that every other day situation where you're sticking to what you've been doing, but then just to start on Monday and then Monday and Friday, and you just get into this rhythm of getting your heart rate up. I think that would be my next step in this evolution, is to get someone breathing heavy 1 to 3 times a week. We have a GPP program for this specific instance here, but if you're kind of new to this world, I think you got to be signed up for GPP and in Telegram and, in the DMs and emails and stuff with Paige and I, and just understanding this world. But hat tip for that's the way to start. If anybody's listening to this that isn't doing that kind of thing, that is the way to start. Like, move your body, get yourself a little bit stronger, prove to yourself that movement is medicine and you feel better when you do it and that whole deal. And then once you feel like that's just part of your life, then it's time to start huffing and puffing.
Yeah, I do love that question. And I love that very general way of saying it. I'm lifting and walking now for 4 months, but I'm going to assume that's pretty consistent. So like, you're building a really good habit by doing that. And, by slowly adding in that 1 day a week or to 2 days a week to whatever. Like, again, we just talked about habit stacking over the last couple weeks in the podcast. And it's like, that is exactly how you do that. And you take away a lot of the intimidation factor by doing that, the fear factor by doing that. So this one kind of hits home because like here at Great White, we are, getting some new members in. And again, people who have never done this before and they're very new. And there's a lot of success with having on-ramps. So finding a gym that does do on-ramping. And if this is, I think, if you're listening to our podcast, there's got to be some like lean towards, I want to do this. Like, I want to do CrossFit. Yeah. Maybe I'm nervous. So this is definitely us like giving you that okay, like to go walk in that door.
Yeah, for sure. All right. We will do 1 or 2 of the extras if we have time kind of situation here and then call it. One question that was actually asked today is if somebody has any tips to move forward in handstand walks, and then it said LOL afterwards. I personally love the wall walk into handstand walking. Huge fan of this. And not just for someone who's learning how to handstand walk, but for someone who's learning how to break at the knee so that they can get out of that like scorpion banana back position. But the first iteration is wall walk, like really beautiful pointed toes, like a really like gymnast style handstand, and just lean off the wall. And I think the expectation to go from not doing it to doing a lot of it is a problem that a lot of people have. The people that I've seen in a gym be okay with like the mat width, the 4 feet or 6 feet, and kicking down and kicking back up. So they have repetition in the part of it that is challenging for them, I think is really helpful. I also do know that this person is actually pretty skilled with wall walks. So we know that there's some capacity there. So I think it's probably a little bit of like, I'm out in open space and it feels like I'm, trying to learn how to swim in the deep end kind of a situation. There's no guardrails, there's no nothing. So for me, the wall walk into the handstand walk is great. And if you get the back pump and do the scorpion style, what we do is we get you up on the wall and we drop the foot so that your heel is down closer to your butt and then have you come off the wall. That one is much easier with a partner because your partner can like put their hand, up just right at the bottom of your upper leg, where your knee is, and kind of help you off the wall. Because you need to feel that position. It feels very foreign when you're upside down like that. This is something that we will be doing at camp to help people level up on their handstand walks. That will be one of the sections that we're doing. But I just I saw the question, wanted to put that out there and let people know that, like, to me, that is the easiest way to learn how to handstand walk, I think.
Was there any context to that? Like, I didn't get to go in Telegram prior to this. Were there any details of like, are they afraid to kick up? Are they afraid to do freestanding stuff?
So to paraphrase, there was a little bit, it does sound like uncomfortable.
There's some fear. Okay.
Yeah. Where your head is at, that position can also, like, if I'm trying to stare forward while I'm kicking up and you can never let your feet take you.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I do like the Like, I like the idea of doing it with a friend, whether they're like, got a PVC that you have like some
Yeah.
feedback to hit to. There is also a video that we have on YouTube from Misfit. I remember with Sherb, like kicking up at the wall, taking a step back, kicking up with his hands a little bit further away, just so that there's constant feedback that your feet have, to fall to.
Handstand walking into the wall.
Into the
basically.
wall, yeah.
Yes.
So
Yep.
just kind of reversing what Drew is talking about. If there is that fear there, and then once that fear goes away, or, you build that confidence, flipping around and starting to walk away, it's just a progression that, perhaps can be added in there.
For sure. I think I'm just going to end really quick with there was someone in Telegram that did I believe it was the test with the bar muscle ups from last phase. I don't remember what the exact workout was, but it was very much someone trying to improve their bar muscle ups. They got a lot of really good feedback. I know you were in their page talking to him about his bar muscle ups. A lot of people gave him some feedback. And then he came back with a video of him in a workout and the explanation of the fact that he had done 45 minutes of practice and hadn't quite figured it out yet. I think his name is Nick. Nick, if you're listening, your bar muscle ups were significantly better in the second video. That is very challenging to do. 45 minutes of practice is way too long. The way that this is one of those work ethic things where
Good
it's
point.
like this, the dosage is off here,
Yeah.
right?
Good point.
Oh, Gorilla Mind Whey sounds good. 6 scoops post workout. It's like you're gonna shit your pants. Like probably you don't need your whole day's worth of protein in one shake. Less time, more frequency, and there are really cool studies on what the mind is doing in between practice. You're trying to teach it what to do, and it needs to absorb the pattern that you're going for and the progression that you're doing. And it doesn't fully grasp all of those things and understand until you give it time, which sounds insane, sounds like hocus pocus, scientifically proven. Work on a skill, give it 48 to 72 hours, work on it again. And then part of it is just, if you're at an affiliate, there's at least one member that whips themselves for an hour with a jump rope and open gym every week. And it's like, that ain't it. It can't be it. You're bleeding and you didn't do any double unders. Please stop. You're scaring everybody.
You work so hard.
Right? So skill acquisition is a skill. Dial back the amount of time you're doing, increase the frequency, work on it like 2 or 3 times a week for say 15 minutes, and you will get to where you want to go. You also can't just snap your fingers and get there. Like, I love that work ethic. I love the fact that someone wants to go run their head through a wall, but skill acquisition isn't one of those things that you can apply that mindset to.
Very coachable too, to take all the feedback like remotely that he did. That's impressive.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. All right. Anything else you want to talk about? You feel good about that? You got any final thoughts?
No, it's pretty fun.
Yeah.
I like
these
it.
ones are good. They're stimulating on our end.
Yeah.
A lot of times I've written all of the notes and kind of already know. So having like thinking on the fly sort of is fun.
Yeah, for sure. That's good. Good questions.
Did we do it?
We did it.
Thank you for tuning into another episode of the Misfit Podcast, and thank you to our show sponsor, Gorilla Mind. You can save money and support the podcast by going to gorillamind.com/misfit or using the word misfit at checkout. Get your ass signed up for camp at CrossFit Roots, Boulder, Colorado, January 30th through February 1st. Get signed up for one of our programs. Go buy some gear, sharpentheaxeco.com. All of that stuff is at the link in bio on the Misfit Athletics Instagram. We'll see you guys next week.